Hi, I'm Ron.
And I'm Leah.
Welcome to Family Heritage Living.
Today we wanted to discuss some things to consider if you're considering homesteading, and also some realities to homesteading itself. One question I think that many people have when they talk about homesteading is, why would you do it?
And we say, why not?
Hey, boy, after 20 years, I think it's about all we know anymore. The question that Countryside always asked is, do you have to have a grubstake to homestead? And we say without a doubt, yes, you have to have a grubstake.
A big one. A big one.
We found our land, praise the Lord, owner finance.
Yep.
And
land contract.
Yep. Because we were not going to be able to buy the amount of land that we wanted outright at this point in our lives, and we didn't want to wait to make the move. And it was exactly where we wanted it to be, so it was just like perfect.
And a lot of banks don't loan money on bare land.
Yes.
So
Because you've got to be able to improve the land to a certain amount in order for them to loan the money, if they do loan it. And I don't think our 24 by 16 cabin quite qualifies for that. But you never know. Anyways, so I think there's some reality that you do need to have a certain amount of money to start your homestead. Things like you need something. If you don't have anything to live on your property, you need to have something to live on your property, whether it's in our situation a trailer, until we get a travel trailer, an RV until we get our cabin finished. In our situation, we needed to have a generator so that the shop work could be done.
Right.
Without that, we wouldn't be able to pay on our land payment or our other bills. So those are things that came up front. If you don't have, help me here.
Well, I think it depends on your situation.
Children, no children, single.
If you, we've watched, obviously we watch YouTube.
Not as much as we'd like, to be honest.
Yeah, not as much as we'd like.
There are so many channels that are so good out there that I wish we could just have the data. We pay for data, but had data to watch. So at any rate,
some of the YouTube we see, people homesteading. It's just a couple, a young couple,
or older couples.
Yeah. But if it's just a single person, man or woman, whatever. They don't need anything like a family of 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever need. So there are so many, I think, different
variables.
levels on what might be needed. In your wherever you may be, the bathroom facilities or outhouse or whatever, a lot of people, use the 5-gallon bucket and sawdust.
Depending on where you're at in their codes.
Depending on where you're at,
our codes don't work like that. We don't have a lot of codes compared to where we came from for what we're doing, but we do have some codes, and we have to meet those requirements. For our area, it was either an outhouse or a composting toilet, a certified composting toilet, and that was just to make it easier than trying to prove that a homemade composting toilet works. Although people have done it and have gotten approved. We just bought, I can't even remember, is it a
Sunmar
composting toilet, pre-certified.
Now we're not getting any kickback or anything, nothing like that.
But they're one of the only composting toilets that were pre-certified, but I think it's NSF or something like that. And so it was just easier for us to meet that requirement. So we had a few requirements we had to meet to do what we wanted to do, and it was just easier to do it that way than trying to do it, where in a way that we might not get approved.
So it just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it not to take the necessary steps that we needed.
But if, like Ron said, if you're a single person or you're just a couple, You could have a porta potty brought in, or the bucket, or whatever
yeah.
your code allows.
And depending on where your location is, a wall tent, or just a tent if you live in the warmer climates, year round. Where we're at, not so much.
Trailer would be pretty cold where we're at.
Not so much. So the things we need are obviously gonna
Vary from situation to situation.
yeah, location, family to family.
But I do think it's realistic to assume that you're going to need a certain amount of money down. It doesn't mean you need to have thousands upon thousands of dollars down. This is
No.
to be real. We're not trying to discourage anyone from
No.
saying I'm just going to go do it. But you do need to have a little bit of a fallback. When we got up here back on July or June 11th, and in that time, we lost our main source of, after our last trip, we lost our main vehicle, and we had several other things. Our backup vehicle kept having difficulties. There was
a few things that were, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, and if we, the one vehicle that we had, our main vehicle, we didn't have money at that point just to turn around and fix it. So that sat there for 8 weeks, 10 weeks.
Something like that.
But we did have, something to fall back on a little bit when the smaller things happened. Like, the other vehicle needed a new alternator and this, that, and the other thing. But if we hadn't had the fallback, we would have been in a world of hurt.
But it's not like we have piles of money.
No.
That's not the case at all.
And I don't think you need piles of money to get started, but you do want to have a little bit of security. Whether it's $1,000 or $2,000. Some people get that in tax returns. If you can set that aside, or sell off your household stuff and set that aside, whatever. But just something to say, you can get me through this crisis until I get a footing. I think that was the biggest thing for us. Is we felt like we weren't getting a footing when we first got up here because the whole area was new. Everything was new. We knew nobody. But we needed to get our feet firmly on the ground.
Well, and some of that was having the vehicle breakdown. So much of our stuff is still at the other location.
So we've
had to improvise, or we haven't
replace.
We haven't replaced a whole lot of things, but we weren't able to make the 12-hour drive to get our more belongings. So it was obviously cheaper and easier, and the only thing we could do to replace
some of the smaller, like whether it's a stock pot to heat water in or something, that's not a big deal to replace. But we have a sander, a belt sander, that we use for a particular order that we're working on right now, and it's a very large order, and that's down south. So do we replace that? But fortunately, thank God, our vehicle's getting fixed right now over the weekend. We should be able to pick it up tomorrow or Tuesday, and the Lord allowing, we'll set up a trip and go down there and get it.
Among other things.
Among a cargo trailer of other things. But, the more expensive things, that threw us in for a little bit of a dither. And everything seems to go wrong at once, I guess. I think when you're starting a homestead, when you're starting a brand new homestead, everything can seem to go wrong at one time.
A brand new homestead.
A brand new homestead. It is brand new.
It is.
It is.
It is.
No one's ever lived on this land before.
No.
Except the Indians.
Except the Indians, yeah.
And bears.
And bears. Maybe the Bernstein bears. Tools and whatnot that we need. Over the years I've learned, I think at first Leah was not so much, but it didn't take her long to see that the certain purchases, certain tools, maybe most of my tools. I worked in the auto body repair for a lot of years, and having good tools was very important. You know, if your tools were broke and you didn't repair the car, and you know, just and that definitely overflows into our home life. Having, I'm not saying expensive tools, but having good tools is so important, especially if you're using them, you know, a lot.
See, we are very adamant about buying things that are repurposed. Someone else has owned them before, or you know, refurbished, whatever. That's important to us because it reduces our, I hate to use the word footprint because I know that implies something totally different from the key phrase of the day, but it reduces our impact on what God has provided us with, where it goes to corporations that, you know, we don't agree with. But there's an area where it's beneficial for us to buy new, and that's tools.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of use that our tools get, our shop tools, and just like the chainsaw, for example. He bought a skill how many years ago?
I was a craftsman.
No, what's your skill?
Oh, the still.
The still?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, we bought a still. Well, prior to that, I had a craftsman, and I got used a little bit. You know, we just started getting into homesteading, and it cut firewood. Nothing big, but it cut firewood, and it, you know, did a decent job for a number of years, and then I got run over.
Thanks, RJ.
We just won't let it go, will we? Even on video.
For the whole world to see that wants to watch.
But anyway, so I needed a new chainsaw, and I really didn't want a cheap replacement saw, because at that time, now we are cutting a lot of firewood, doing a lot of chainsaw work. So I wanted something that was very dependable and good. I did a lot of researching, and I did a lot of review checking on different saws and stuff, and for us, dollar for dollar, you know, pound for pound, whatever, the Still was the way to go. And we're not getting kickbacks or anything from Still. So that's
it's just what we use.
yeah,
it's what we like.
I've had it for
6 years.
6 years, I guess, and I haven't even replaced the spark plug in it yet. Knock on wood.
A few bars.
Yeah,
a few
chains and bars. Yeah, but it's been a very dependable saw.
It's a workhorse. I mean, we put a lot of our tools like that through, I mean, constant use.
Yep.
Every day that thing gets used almost 6 days out of the week, several hours a day.
A friend of ours, at the same time, had bought. He'd gone through I don't know how many different chainsaws now, but he'd bought some of the cheaper brands, and he'd burn them up the same winter, and he'd go buy another one. And you know, before the end of the wood cutting season the next year, he'd burn it up. So you know, he's down, you know, 3, 4, 5 different chainsaws, and by that time now he's spent a lot more than I spent on the Still. And I know, you know, at times we don't have the money to spend on something that, or I should say invest in a tool like that. If we can, great. If we can't, then obviously we can't. But the Still sure has been a good investment.
Just like your Craftsman, not your Craftsman, sorry. I'm stuck on Sears right now, I guess. Your DeWalt saws for the business.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
the miter saws.
Yep, the chop saws, the miter saws, yep. They've done hundreds of thousands of slicing.
You know, and they're good for, you know, I don't know what they say. The average person probably does how many thousands of slices a year?
Yeah, not that.
5,000 maybe.
Yeah, something like that. Yep, and we do that. We can do that in a week.
Oh yeah, oh, hands down, not a
Yep.
problem.
So just again, we're not plugging DeWalt or nothing like that. It's been a good tool for us, so we stuck with them.
Yeah, and I think the point here is that sometimes you need to invest a little more because the dependability, not having to, stop in the middle of a job you're doing. You know, how difficult is it or frustrating is it when you're trying to cut down a tree and your chainsaw, goes kaput, or you've got to go, you have to go get it worked on, so all the work stops and your production level slows down.
Yep.
Or the same with the chop saws or
whatever
tool it is. Sometimes it's just worth it in production time and frustration time to spend a little bit more looking at the quality versus the price tag. And again, like Ron said before, we're not sitting on a pile of money. We just have had to make some choices out of knowing from experience. Tools of the trade, tools in homesteading are important. Your wood stove, that's important.
It is very important.
Doesn't mean it has to be an expensive wood stove, but
No.
you need to do your research and find out, what wood stoves are. We have a gym, we have a home comfort.
A 1930 or 1926 home comfort.
And we got our margin gym back in 2007.
Yep.
And it's a beautiful stove.
It
It
is.
really is. And I really don't have any complaints about that stove except one thing, the firebox and the grates. That home comfort, almost 100 years old, has cast iron
Fire grates.
Yep.
And brick.
They've never been replaced. They're still the original set that came with the stove.
Yep.
We have done 4 sets of fire bricks and 3 sets of grates in this margin gym. Now this gym was not cheap. It was cheaper than the oval. We were looking at the oval at the time.
Yeah.
And we, tit for tat, we thought it was a good deal. But when we look at the amount it cost us, it's almost $500 to replace the entire unit within the firebox, and that's 4 times, 3.5 times. That becomes expensive.
Yep. Yep.
It becomes frustrating because the bricks start to break and the grates start to
Break, warp and break.
that hold the fire, the logs and stuff.
Yep.
And you start to worry about it, and you gotta save your money up and go through the whole process. But we didn't know that that was an issue with the stove.
Right. Right.
We do now.
Yep.
But it's just one of those things where it's just you have to take time. Ron's got to tear the stove apart and replace it all.
And it's always an inopportune time.
Usually January. When you don't want to shut the stove down at all.
Right.
'Cause it's got to be shut down for 24 hours. But anyways, tools of the trade in homesteading are worth a good investment if you can afford it.
They are. Yep.
And if you can't afford it and you've got to go with, something not optimal, try to plan ahead for later down the road when you can replace it with something. A good saw is going to make wood cutting a whole lot more pleasant than a bad saw.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And some of those things we can get at garage sales.
Yeah.
Secondhand stores. I don't know how many chainsaws I've seen at secondhand stores, and I'm not sure I'd want to buy one at a secondhand store. But
Why is that?
well,
You don't know the uses.
you don't know it may just be tuckered out. Buying somebody else's problems.
Okay, yeah. If you
That's-
get a killer deal on it, that's one thing. But if you're
Yeah. I got a chainsaw given to me at one time a few years back, and man, it ran great. Thing was a piece of junk. had a new bar, a new chain on it. Ran great, but I don't know what the deal was, but it would not. It
cut.
just would not cut. So yeah, whatever. That could have been just a lemon.
Could have been. We've had a few of those brand new.
Yep. But yeah, just tools are a good investment for the homestead. Good tools, and like I just said, not necessarily new. And again, depending on what we're doing with them, what you're doing with them. Because a lot of things, we don't like to buy new.
Right.
If we can get around it.
The non-powered tools, are great to buy used. Shovels, post hole diggers, things like that. If you can get a hold of them used.
Or if you know somebody you work with or something like that.
How it was treated.
Taken care of or whatever. Yep. Absolutely.
Things typically take 500 times longer with homesteading than in suburbia.
500 times.
Some days it feels like that, yes. Yes, indeed. Nothing is ever as fast as you think it's going to be.
What about tools of the trade? What about like cast iron cookware and stuff?
Oh, great investment. I use, over the years, what I've kept my cookware down to is stainless steel, cast iron, and enamel. So those have been I don't cook in anything else. Oh, I take that back. I have a stoneware bread pan that I do cook in occasionally, and some tin bread pans, but outside of that, that's it. What I have come to, and I've used enamel for years, and it's actually been my favorite. But what I've come to the decision with the enamel, and I usually use the enamel in stock pots to either for soups or to warm up water. And we've done this for years. But I think, like with the enamel, you pay as much for the stainless steel as you do for the enamel for a decent pot. And the enamel chips. If you drop it, if something hits it, it chips. And then it's really not, you don't know what's underneath the enamel. You don't know what kind of metal's there. And, you don't want to leach stuff into your food. I mean, you still cook with it, yeah, even though you really shouldn't. But it's just, I don't think it's as good an investment as stainless steel. Yep. And cast iron is always wonderful. The only thing I like enamel in now is my cookie sheets.
Yep.
And I do like my Fiesta ware for baking.
In the
gas stove in the trailer, but not in my wood stove. Well, in the wood stove, as long as the heat's low enough, certain things I didn't mind putting in there, but not for overall. But yeah, I mean, whatever you use, you've got to be able to depend on. You've got to like the end product that you're getting. And you don't want to have to replace it. And I don't want to have to go out and buy, new cookware every time Thanksgiving turns around. Or,
well, what blew up in the stove a few years ago?
Yeah, glass is supposed to be good in wood stoves, and for all of you that have used glass in wood stoves, more power to you.
Oven approved.
Oven approved, yep.
Whatever.
I can't remember what the big brand is, but had a lasagna pan, and I put that in our...
And we were ready for lasagna.
Oh, it's beautiful. It was beautiful. Into the wood stove, and it wasn't a roaring fire. It was just typical, probably 350, 400 in that range. And I heard a noise after about a half hour of that pan being in the oven, and I opened it up, and it was in a million tiny little pieces. I don't know, the whole thing, the entire pan, the entire pan poofed. The entire pan, though, is just in these tiny itty bitty particles. And I will never ever put glass in a wood stove again, just because of that whole experience. And I got rid of all my glass stuff for cooking and just went to the cast iron and enamel in the oven type stuff. I do love enamel for roaster pans in the oven.
Yeah,
but as far as stock pots, I wouldn't buy any more enamel. But that's why Ron said, the Fiesta ware in the gas oven that's in the trailer right now, that works good, but I still wouldn't trust it in the wood stove, just because it fluctuates, the heat fluctuates so quick.
Yeah, it can, for sure.
If I'm just warming something up, yeah, it's not a big deal, but I don't want to leave it in there for any length of time.
Just quality tools of the trade.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, one of our boys is a wood carver, and
Yeah,
he's
getting into that.
he started several years ago, and at first he bought cheap chisels because that's what he could afford, and that's, you know, we really hate to invest too much in something until we know how into it they're going to be.
Right.
And he stayed in it, and now he invests more in much more expensive tools, and it's a total difference for his outcome project and the
Yeah, it
amount of
is.
effort he has to put into
Time
it.
and yep.
Yeah.
How they cut his fingers. is- they cut his fingers really well. Nice clean cuts. But yeah, they are. Excuse me. They are good tools. He's had them, some of them, for several years now, and he keeps a nice sharp edge on them, and it doesn't take him much to keep an edge on them. Just good tools, just like a good pocket knife or whatever. Because of the length of this video, we're gonna do two parts to it. So please stand by for part 2.
Please tell me you got it.
God bless.